Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Dionne Aminata, Director of Strategic Initiatives at Illustrative Mathematics, and one of the lead authors of the IMK5 Math curriculum. Today's webinar, Access to Mathematics Through Language, is the fourth of 5 in our Experience IMK5 Math webinar series. In previous webinars, we've highlighted the role that student thinking plays in our problem-based curriculum, and we shared how using our curriculum can support culturally responsive pedagogy and promote an equitable learning environment. Today, we'll continue to focus on equity in the math classroom as we discuss how tending to language provides access to mathematics and how this can happen even with the problem-based lesson structure. After spending a few minutes sharing some key ways IMK5 Math supports academic language development, we will be joined by this incredible panel of math educators, language development experts, and school leaders. They're going to help us unpack this topic by sharing practical ways to incorporate academic language practice into math instruction and create an inclusive environment for multilingual and standard English learners. Unfortunately, due to a personal family matter, Dr. Vinci Darrow is unable to join our panel today. Dr. Vinci Darrow was on the working group at Understanding Language that helped identify, adapt, and describe the math language routines that are embedded in the IM curriculum. She is a math content expert with an anthropologist lens and loves working with linguists and language development experts on projects like this. She is currently Director of STEM Learning at Envision Learning Partners, an organization that focuses on the nuts and bolts of changing the way assessment happens in schools and districts. Although she won't be joining us today, she has sent us some amazing resources that we'll share with you in the chat on her behalf. During this discussion, please feel free to use the chat feature to make comments and to ask questions directly to our panelists, and the Q&A feature to ask questions about our materials. This event has been made accessible through live captioning. To gain access to captions, click on the live transcript icon on your Zoom screen menu and select Show Subtitles. If you are a Twitter user, tag us at Illustrate Math and use the hashtag LearnWithIM to share your enthusiasm with us. To help frame the importance of today's discussion, we'll now hear from the CEO of Illustrative Mathematics, Bill McCallum.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's just amazing to see you all here, see people from all over the country. That list of places in the chat, it just warms my heart to see the enthusiasm for this curriculum and for learning about our supports for language development. Why is language development a critical part of mathematics instruction? Well, I mean, language is critical to mathematics learning because students learn mathematics by explaining their thinking and listening to other students explain their thinking. And so that's really a fundamental to the way this curriculum is structured. There's a lot of language development, even for kids whose first language is English, there's mathematical language development. So it's really built in. We adopted 4 principles for the design of the K-5 curriculum, which we developed with the folks at UL Scale, and Vinci Darrow, as Dionne mentioned, was part of that. We support sense making by amplifying language so that students can make their own meaning. We provide opportunities for students to describe their mathematical thinking orally, visually, and in writing, which we describe as optimizing output, optimizing language output. We support constructive mathematical conversation when students talk to each other in pairs or in whole groups, which we call cultivating conversation. And then there's this notion of meta-awareness, maximizing meta-awareness. Strengthen students' ability to think about their language awareness, to think about their cognition is very important as they're learning this new language, mathematics. One of the things about our philosophy is to integrate language learning into the mathematics learning. So we don't think that kids should be having some separate vocabulary lists. They learn mathematical vocabulary after they had a chance to play around with the ideas that the vocabulary describes, not before. Because then the point of the vocabulary is evident. If you're talking about something, you have an idea you want to talk about, you realize, okay, I should have a word for this. So that's our approach to talking about vocabulary, so that the need for it is evident. So that's really all I have to say. I just want to welcome you all, and I look forward to this webinar and hope that you get a lot out of it, and I'm going to pass it back to Dionne now.
Thank you so much, Bill. So up next, we'll have a brief but highly anticipated presentation where you'll learn more about the features of INK5 Math that can provide access to multilingual and standard English learners. This presentation by the amazing Certified Professional Learning Facilitator, Courtney Ortega, will include an interactive demo of a math language routine. So get ready to do a little math with us. Courtney is passionate about mathematics learning, and she is passionate about supporting teachers and students to build and nurture positive mathematical identities. As the secondary math coordinator at Oakland Unified School District in California, she has developed professional learning systems that empower teams of teachers to engage in the inquiry that puts the focus back onto students. Courtney believes in the power of collaboration for both students and adults as we all explore the joy and beauty of mathematics. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you, Dionne. And hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and to get to do some math with you like Dionne shared, and also just share some of the ways that INK5 Math provides access to math through language. In a problem-based math classroom, sense making and language are interwoven. So just like Bill shared, we do these things at the same time. So our math classrooms are language rich, and that also means that we have language demanding learning environments for every student. The students are expected to say or write mathematical explanations, state assumptions, make conjectures, and construct mathematical arguments. And these occur in either orally or in writing at any time during our classrooms. So to support ELs or English learners in their development of language, curriculum now includes instruction devoted to fostering this language development alongside math learning. We have our math language routines that are embedded into our activities in our curriculum. So these math language routines, or MLRs, are structured opportunities to amplify, assess, and develop students' academic language. They're also designed for students at all stages of language development. So they're appropriate for our English learners and our students who are learning math as a language. And they also foster students' mathematical thinking. So we're going to get a chance to play with one of these MLRs together. This MLR is called Co-Craft Questions, and we're going to drop into 4th grade to see how students use this routine to reason about various snacks. So I must admit, I'm actually really excited for this lesson. When I first read it, I thought this lesson was written for my family. We are a mixed race family, and we feel connected to both our Mexican culture on my husband's side and our Chinese culture on my side. So you're going to see, we're going to talk about paletas today. We're going to talk about Pocky sticks, and those are snacks that are absolutely always in our home. All right, so back to the problem. Let's please take a moment to read this situation to ourselves and consider a mathematical question we can ask about the situation. We're going to do this as a waterfall chat, so you can prepare your answer in the chat box, but please don't hit enter until I say go. So again, what mathematical questions can we ask about this situation? All right, once you have your question ready in the chat box, go ahead and hit enter. Let's see what those questions are. Wow. Okay. Talk about a waterfall. All right. I'm seeing a lot of questions around how many of each flavor? How many flavors are there? How many students are in her class? How many paletas did she buy in all? Yes, this is great. Ooh, does the pattern repeat? How much do they cost? How many come per pack of paletas? Does everybody get one? Wow. Okay. So there are a lot of questions in here. As you're scrolling back through the chat box, I invite you to consider, how are these questions alike and how might they be different? I'll just give us all a moment to read through some of these questions. How are they alike? How are they different? Lots of how many questions, absolutely. Yeah, so as I'm scrolling through, I'm seeing there's a lot of questions that might involve multiplying or dividing to help that we might need to use those operations to answer these questions. And something that is different is depending on the question, we might use a different operation, right? Yeah, absolutely. So Haley's saying some want to know the groups, some want to know the numbers in each group. Yeah, there's lots of great questions in here. Okay, so let's take a look at the next problem in this activity. So please take a look at this prompt and think about which of our questions that we put in the chat box are most similar to this question. Something that I'm thinking about with this question is this might connect back to some of those how many of each flavor, or maybe how many does everyone get kind of questions that we saw earlier in the chat box, right? Yeah, we're thinking about grouping. Yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to be asked to use division to answer a question about our paletas. All right, so we're going to kind of pause in moving through this activity so we can get a chance to just reflect from a teacher perspective, what's going on? Let's reflect on this co-craft routine. So as a reminder, we first had a situation where we were asked to ask a math question about a situation, and then we were given a specific question to answer regarding some division that we might do. So in the chat box, I invite you to respond to this question that we have here on the slide. How did co-crafting questions help us foster mathematical understanding and promote language use, mathematical language use? So you might think about that as like, now that we've done co-craft questions, how might that help us as students be able to solve that question that we just saw and move forward in our math understanding? This is great. I'm seeing so many wonderful reflections in the chat box. I'm seeing a lot of comments around this helps with sense making. We get to make connections between our formal and informal language. We're seeing lots of ways we might think about it. We're adding context to the vocab, right? I could imagine in a classroom, we're drawing pictures and you know, making diagrams to illustrate how we might group our paletas. Great, thank you. Yeah, so I really feel like this routine of co-crafting questions, this really builds on students' natural curiosities, helps them build confidence, because now I'm seeing in the chat box, Kathy's saying this helps students to visualize, right? Now students have these different access points to making sense of this problem. They're activating some of their prior learning, and they're getting language into the room that now we get to use as we continue to talk about division. Let's go back into our problem, and let's see how students continue to work with language and sense making as they move forward in the next activity. So now we get to think about Pocky sticks, definitely a favorite snack in my house. So go ahead and take a moment, read the problem, and consider what might students say or do to answer this question. I love that some of the early chat responses are really thinking about how might we continue to support students to make sense of this problem, make it come to life. I'm seeing some suggestions of drawing a picture, drawing a representation, right? And so as students work with this particular question, they might notice this does not divide into 110 evenly. So now we're gonna have to make sense of what do we do about leftover Pocky sticks? So before we even learn the term remainder, we are working with division problems that involve remainders. So this is one way that students are able to play with mathematical ideas before formalizing them. After each activity, we have an activity synthesis where the teacher helps the class solidify topics from the activity. In this synthesis, students are now introduced to the term remainders, because now we have done some work with division problems where we have leftovers. Now students have that mental model of what does that mean to have a leftover? And now there's a reason to think about this idea of remainders. At this point in the lesson, the term remainder is a receptive language demand. This means students are listening to the teacher use the term remainder, and they're reading the term remainder in their tasks. We have certain language demands that come from learning mathematics. We have our listening and reading receptive demands, which means students understand if they see or hear. And then we have our speaking and writing demands, which are our productive demands, which means students understand if they are using language. The language learners know language receptively before they know it productively. So for example, like I shared, my husband is Mexican. He's a fluent Spanish speaker. It is my lifelong goal to become fluent in Spanish, but I can read and understand a lot of it already, but I can't yet speak it. This is the same for our students. English learners often understand more than we think they do. And this is because in order for them to show they understand, they need to actually produce them. So understanding students have from listening and reading is sometimes hidden from our site. We also have two more language demands that are really critical to the learning of mathematics. We have representing, so this might be using an equation, a diagram, a drawing to visually show a mathematical situation. And then we have conversing, so that work of that back and forth conversation, working with a partner to solve a problem. Let's take a look at a problem a few lessons later in the unit to see how students continue to develop their understanding of remainder. So again, I invite you to read this problem and consider, what is this problem asking students to do? Yeah, we now have to justify answers. We're interpreting remainder. We need to make a decision, right? So whereas before we were just making sense of leftovers in this term remainder, now we have to explain and represent our thinking because we have to make a decision as to whether or not we should have 94 boxes with leftovers or add a 95th box that isn't full. So through looking at these activities, hopefully we were able to illustrate the power of using familiar language as students are making sense of problems and mathematical ideas. We experienced that with the paletas and the Pocky sticks, where we got to explore the idea of leftovers or needing to make a new group. Then our activity synthesis introduced the term remainder, and we had opportunities to hear and read this term over the next few lessons. And finally, in the muffin problem, we were able to use the term remainder to justify our reasoning. So hopefully you enjoyed playing with some math ideas and co-crafting some questions with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. We are so lucky to have her as an I Am Certified Facilitator. And I love that you make connections to the tasks with your own family. That is so awesome. So now we're going to welcome our incredible panel. Dr. Enrique Acosta Jaramillo is the Spanish translator, Spanish translation lead on the I Am K5 Math project and is currently a content developer at Mathematics Consortium Working Group. He has a PhD in mathematics and is passionate about math teaching and learning at all levels. He has worked as a consultant in resource creation and translation at all levels. And he strongly believes in the importance of high quality open educational resources to transform mathematics education around the world. Welcome.
Thank you, happy to be here.
Awesome. Anthony Jackson is the Director, Community Schools Transformation for the Humanizing Education for Equitable Transformation, or HEAT, Community of Schools in the Los Angeles Unified School District. Previously, he was principal at Hillcrest Drive Elementary School and was a founding co-director of Culture and Language Academy of Success, a renowned charter school committed to culturally and linguistically responsive pedagogy. He is currently a doctoral candidate at UCLA. Go Bruins. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Dionne. And it's an honor to be here. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins, that's right. All right, and Liz Ramirez is the Director of Implementation and former I Am Director of Access and Supports at Illustrative Mathematics, where she has worked with teams to develop quality resources and professional learning opportunities that empower teachers to meet the diverse needs of their students. She is passionate about supporting access for English learners and students with disabilities. Welcome, Liz.
Thanks, Dionne. Great to see everyone.
Good to have you here. And Georgina Rivera is a school administrator, math education consultant, and the second vice president at the National Council of Supervisors of Mathematics, or NCSM. And we are so happy to have her here. As a practitioner, she partners with teachers and coaches to develop professional learning resources to support the implementation of culturally relevant practices. All of her work is in service of ensuring greater learning opportunities for each and every student, especially for marginalized groups. We are so happy to have all of our panelists here. Welcome, Georgina.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And I just want to say it's an honor to be here with all of you and with all of our community of learners here today. So I'm excited about today, not just learning from the panel, but learning from all of the people that are here. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I cannot wait, as I'm sure you cannot wait to hear from this brilliant panel. So let's get right to our first question. I'm just going to ask each of you to share with our audience how you center students' academic language development in your work and why you think this work is important. And we're going to start with Anthony.
Again, thanks, Dionne, and everybody. I'm happy to be here. It's truly an honor. So this year in the HEAT community of schools, we've adopted as one of our intentions, lift every voice. Now, that's an obvious riff on James Weldon Johnson's famous song written in the 1900s, also affectionately known as the Black National Anthem. We state our intention to elevate, amplify, and center the voices of those most often silenced in the educational enterprise, and that being students, their families and caregivers and community members. So for me, it's important to contextualize, centering students' academic language and a larger belief on centering and honoring student voice, period. Okay, as meaningful, as essential in the classroom, and also, the lunch pavilion, the playground, wherever students are, right? Now, there are obviously implications for validating and affirming students, or for our purposes here, mathematical learners, identity development and agency, as culturally and linguistically responsive educators, I believe in my tribe, we believe that there's not a more essential aspect of one's identity than language and culture. And so in developing students' behavior, broader academic identities, academic language development becomes paramount. And it's through this work that, we end up growing what I like to call budding scholars.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Georgina?
I love that, Anthony. So I'm just going to actually start with the why, because it's really the why and the mission behind the work that I do in my schools within NCSM. And so I am a multilingual learner, and I experienced that through school. And so being a multilingual learner and not having access when I was in school to mathematics at the highest level really drives the work that I do now, because I know I couldn't have been the only one experiencing this. And so I want to bring voice and amplify this for each and every math educator and bold leader out there, because we have to know that students are there and they want access to mathematics. And I want to say this, we have to believe that all multilingual learners are brilliant in mathematics. We have to believe that has to be the starting point, because I know just working with students in classrooms that they bring so much knowledge. And even though they're not able to articulate it yet, it still lives within them and it deserves to be honored. And our number one job is to figure out how to best understand them and create classrooms that are language rich to really most help them excel in math. And so the how behind it, one of it, the things I'm thinking about is, we have to have language rich classrooms. We have to walk into classrooms that are noisy, where students are talking, and it's the students that have the voice within that classroom. Secondly, we need to be culturally responsive. So are the tasks that we're putting in front of our students, are they visuals? Are they tasks? Are they models that they can access and connect to personally that they care about? I always say kids will always talk if you give them something to talk about. Let's give them something to talk about in math, something that's exciting and fun and related to what they know. And then finally, through stories. Students are so connected to their stories. They want to share their stories. And when you listen, you hear the math because they're always doing math in their home life. Let's ask them about that math and bring it into our math classrooms and connect it to the math that we're doing, because those stories have value. And it's not just their stories, like Anthony was saying, it's the stories of their families. So the more we do those things, the more they're going to excel. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about that first question. And I just appreciate Anthony's share about culture as well.
Thank you so much. And someone in the comments said, Crystal Watson in the comments said, Gina is brilliant and inspiring. And I would like to echo that. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work that you do. Liz.
IM classrooms are language rich. This means they are language demanding environments for all students, not just our language learners. So students are expected to communicate so that others in the room can understand, and they're also expected to do the work of understanding their peers. This means that learning math also means learning how to communicate, how to listen to each other, how to ask questions, how to revise and refine your thinking, and how to express it in a way so that others may understand. When developing the K-5 materials, it was really important to us to provide teachers with strategies for addressing language barriers so that they can facilitate access to rigorous grade level mathematics. This is an important equity component of our curriculum and our vision for a world where all learners know, use, and enjoy mathematics.
Thank you so much, Liz, and totally understand being nervous, but honestly, you have been such an asset to all of our materials, doing the work of making sure all of our students have access to the language, and also through our your work with students with disabilities. The work speaks for itself. So thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate you and your time. Enrique.
Thank you, Dionne. Yeah, so related to my work, I do all sorts of work, but there's of course the translation I led for the IM resources, in which language plays an incredibly important role. The whole point was to make a version of the resources available in another language that should work in parallel with the English resources and supporting English language learners. And it was the key, one of the key things we focused on was to make sure that the very good language development strategy of the English resources also got translated. So it was not just about translating the text themselves, but translating the whole language strategy that the resources were proposing in English, so that it transferred into Spanish well, and that it worked in parallel in a classroom in which both languages were being used. Regarding other work I do, I also work in content development, so writing calculus textbooks. So we're always crafting new text in textbooks, new problems, design online versions for problems. And again, here the whole point is to focus on the language and how you promote learning through the text themselves. So text figures, how do you help students actually learn? And how does the text that you write help with that? So how you make sure that students understand what they're supposed to do, how you might write something that's inviting and clear, and it's also very concise and non-distracting. And the last thing I do, I am also a teacher all the time, and I mean, I really think that language plays a fundamental role in helping students own math. And I think one of the most important things that needs to happen in a math class is that students get to own the subject for themselves, and language plays a key role in that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Enrique, and to all of our panelists for sharing your expertise and the work that you do in math education, or just in education in general for all of our students. We are putting on the screen a quote from, it's from English Language Learners and the New Standards by Heritage, Walke, and Linquanti from 2015. And it reads, when teachers construct powerful invitations to engage English language learner students in language use in worthwhile disciplinary contexts, they can develop conceptual understandings, analytical practices, and dynamic language use in the domain, enabling them to succeed in school and beyond. Would any of you like to respond to this quote?
I can jump in. This is key. Thanks, Dionne. Historically, language support for multilingual learners in math classrooms was limited to things like copying down vocabulary, words and definitions, and really just communicating primarily with the teacher. Language use becomes dynamic when students are actively using language to collaborate. So we know that for all students, including those who are learning a new language, mathematical sense-making and mathematical language develop simultaneously. Ideas take shape through words, language, texts, illustrations, conversations, debates, examples, and so on. And we know that the way students learn mathematics is by making sense of problems and through collaboration. So that's what we want to see in a dynamic classroom.
Thank you so much, Liz. And now I'm sharing the correct screen. Thank you. love the behind the scenes team. It's amazing. All right. And so would anyone else like to follow up on that? Actually, Georgina, I have a question for you with your work with teachers and leaders. What do powerful invitations do to support the positioning and mathematical identities of multilingual students?
So thank you, first of all, for asking me that. And so to me, powerful invitations are personal. And that means we have to first really get to know each and every one of our students and what they really care about and what background knowledge they bring into the room, what hobbies they have, what is part of their culture, what is their culture, what is their home language. So all of that is really important because you can only invite someone, think about that you truly know. I'm going to invite someone that I know or get to know. And that's really important in classrooms, that students, especially multilingual learners, are seen and heard in the mathematics classroom. So you get to know them through stories or through images. Sometimes I'll even personally ask them. I remember being in my classroom and I would ask, like, you know, if you were a student and you just arrived, Dionne, where are you from? Can you show me? And we would search it and we would look at images, and they'd be so excited to point to them. They might not be able to say where they were from, but they could first start with just showing me. As a classroom teacher, I did that intentionally because then I could start to understand what context can I connect Dionne to, so I can position her to be an expert in certain areas of mathematics. Because if I know my students well, when I'm talking about a certain problem, let's say I know that Dionne likes dance, then I can position her during that problem to be an expert for other students. So that's one way we position them. And when you position them as experts, that grows their math identity. Another piece that I wanted to share is we also want to honor the ways in which they bring mathematics into the classroom. Students coming from other countries learn lots of ways to do mathematics, and they don't have to be the same strategies that we are using. And so if you see a student doing mathematics in an interesting way, help them to position them to share that with the whole room. That's just one more strategy that we can add to our bucket of strategies as a classroom, and then honor that by writing it down, letting them show other students, even if you're doing the verbalizing for them, if they're not able to do that yet, and then post that work up in the room. That positions them as an expert. So you really want to take the time to learn, how do they use mathematics, and why are we trying to undo things that they already know? So if they have a strategy for division, let's let them use it, and not only use it, but share it, because other students may be drawn to it. So that's really important that we're positioning them. And then I would always say the last way is honoring them by putting their work up. And I know that sounds small, but it's big for a student. My work was never really posted because it wasn't of the mainstream culture. But yet, if it was posted, that would have helped me to see myself as a mathematician, and that would have positioned me and helped me to grow my identity. And so even if it's an image, even if they haven't fully articulated what they understand, that you could take their images, take a picture of what they're doing in math and post the picture. That's what should be in our classroom walls. That's what powerful invitations look like, because when their families come in and they see their work posted, that means everything. So if you're a classroom teacher or a leader, look at the walls on the classrooms that you enter and be sure that all students are represented. They're not just our multilingual learners, but all students. So to me, those are just some of the ways we can start to create powerful invitations.
So true. Thank you so much. I'm going to show another part of this quote. Actually, go back. It says, an added advantage is that effective pedagogy for ELLs will be equally beneficial for native speakers of English who are not doing well because they speak a non-standard variety of English and have not been appropriately assisted to learn the academic and more formal uses of the language. And so I'm going to direct this question to Anthony, who works with a lot of standard English learners. React to that quote, please.
Yeah, sure. First, I want to give props to Liz and Georgina for really artful articulations of, just basically just language and math and that intersection. And yeah, thank you guys so much. But Dionne, I want to actually take a bit of an issue with the assumptions embedded in this quote. Okay.
Go for it.
While ultimately, though, believing in the positive intent of the authors who crafted it, since it is linked to the work that's dear to me in addressing the needs of standard English language learners. And just for the sake of clarity, let me define who standard English learners are, or as we say, SELs. And I gotta say, 20 years ago, we had SELs before social emotional learning came up, and now there's all this confusion. Sometimes I use the term SELs and people are like, oh, wait, and I'm using it in a different context than many others, but standard English learners are students for whom standard English is not native, right? And so, we went to the sociolinguistic literature and research basically to allow us to begin to serve language different African-American students who arrive at school fluent in what we call African-American language, also known in the literature as African-American vernacular English, and alternately Black English vernacular. There's also, that research also identifies Mexican-American students as speaking Chicano English, not immigrants, but those who've been in the United States for some time, as speaking Chicano English, another non-standard language variety, right? Native American students speaking what's known as Native American English, also derogatorily termed Red English, and then Hawaiian American students who speak Hawaiian Pidgin, right? And these students, this group of students, typically John Ogbu, he's a sociologist at Berkeley, he's passed away, but he identified each of these groups as having a similar sort of linguistic history here in the United States. And so the issue I take is that we know that in terms of language register, and you guys, you can tell I'm a language guy, but also I see the importance of merging some of my knowledge around language with math instruction. But I need to say that in terms of language register, no student arrives at school fluent in academic language or language that is as linguists would say, the formal register. That's just not the case. And so in the work I do, we're committed to the linguistic supports that build students' fluency in standard English, because we know that can be a solid and equitable foundation on which to develop academic language, just like other students for whom standard English is native, okay? And so that's part of the work that we do. The Academic English Mastery Program in LA Unified School District, I worked for a number of years under my mentor, Dr. Noma Lemoyne, now led by Kim Mitchell. They've been doing this work for years, for the past 20 years. And so, we are big on ensuring that we give students the tools, right? The linguistic tools and supports to begin to master standard English, especially if standard English is not native for them, and then use that as a bridge towards beginning to develop proficiency in academic language.
So powerful. So Anthony, and almost Dr. Anthony Jackson, is definitely telling us we are going to learn something today. And I know the work started more than 20 years ago, because I too was a part of LAUSD when we were in the academic English mastery program. And I'm leading some of this work with our standard English learners. And so I appreciate you schooling us today on all of these facts. Thank you so much. The next question is for Enrique. You have led the work of getting K-5 math student materials translated into Spanish. You were able to translate the materials in a way that communicates mathematics meaningfully. So I ask you, what was your process for translating the materials, and why is a simple word-for-word translation like the one that could be put into Google Translator insufficient?
Yeah, okay, there. Dionne, well, I hope we managed to translate the resources in a way that communicates the mathematics meaningfully. And I certainly hope that people who are attending or seeing this as a recording have found it useful. Okay, so there's sort of two things here. Why is a simple word-for-word translation not sufficient? I don't know if any of you has tried, but if you try to, Google Translate is getting very good at translating generic texts. So you go into Google Translate and you give it some text in English or Spanish and want to go one way or another, and it usually does a surprisingly good job. But if you try with something that's along the lines of some technical language, like for example, the language used in a mathematical resource for learning, then things do not work out so well. Google is not that good at translating technical texts. So it just goes from little things like it's selecting the wrong choice of translating of a term. As a very simple example, in English you use add to both add an object to a collection and to add two numbers as in the operation of addition. But in Spanish, we have two words for it. And so Google sometimes uses one word or another, and it's really important that one word or the other is used in Spanish. So those sorts of things are really, really important. And then like instructions for students on what to do can also change in unexpected ways, right? So students could end up doing a different activity just because the statement was translated in an incorrect way. But besides those, what I would call atomic details, there's like more global issues, like thinking about the coherence of the translation throughout the whole, all the grades, or thinking about the language progressions that the resource in English has and how you translate the progression itself. And the care, taking care of the meaning that is given to words and how the meaning changes through the grades. And all these things are, well, they're not going to be done by a computer, at least not yet. Who knows when it will happen. How we did it, I'll just be very brief, but so we had a very highly skilled group of translators. They were all Spanish native speakers, but we also made sure that they could understand the pedagogical content and intent of the activities and what was happening in the class. So they had to have a teaching experience in math. They had to have math-related degrees. They had to have, hopefully, and most of them had teaching experience both in English and in Spanish. And I think that helps a lot. I mean, you need to make sure that the translator understands what's happening. It's not just the text, but what's happening in the class. We used a huge translator database, which kept growing to guarantee coherence and to make sure that we were taking care of the progressions. And we followed a very rigorous 4-step process in which at least four people looked at every single text. So text got translated and they were basically checked 3 times by different people. And this all, I mean, the premise is that different people see different things, and that will always be true. So no matter how much you give infinite time to one person, they'll do a worse job than 4 people that just go over the same text. And we had a continuous and very organized communication. I don't know if you know Slack, but Slack allowed us to have like very specific conversations on little tiny subjects, and everything was organized, and it was our decisions were in the system. It was like in a way creating a gigantic collective brain that was doing the translation, the whole thing. And that was, I guess that's basically a very short summary.
Thank you so much. I know some school districts may be thinking about doing their own translations, and so just keeping in mind that there's a lot that goes into translating the materials to make sure that they're meaningful. So thank you so much for sharing that, Enrique. For our next question, I'm going to ask Anthony to get us started. In your experience, what are some challenges with developing academic language and conceptual understanding of mathematics simultaneously? And what advice would you give to teachers to overcome these challenges?
So allow some grace here, because actually I think the biggest challenge rests in the minds of educators. I'm just to be frank with you guys. I actually feel that, you know, there are a number of folks who are still really holding on to this idea that math is neutral somehow, and who do not view numeracy through a language lens. I love the quote of Michelle Vance, right on. I'm loving the fact that math is being emphasized as a language, right? And so, you know, one of my current heroes, the scholar Gholdy Muhammad, has been instrumental in identifying literacies in a plural sense, right? And in a way that is inclusive of mathematics, right? And which provides like rich opportunities for students to begin to use language that reflects their mathematical thinking. Dr. McCallum mentioned, you know, the emphasis and the importance of, you know, giving students an opportunity to express and you know, display their mathematical thinking. And so, you know, the whole idea of having many problem-solving opportunities, Dionne, when we were waiting to come on, that video you showed with the beautiful idea that the little girl says she loves story problems, right? I mean, absolutely. And there's an opportunity when you begin to use story problems to give students all these wonderfully rich ways that they can go about solving the problem and using language to help explain and articulate, you know, what their mathematical thinking was as they were engaged in the solving of the problem. So I think that's important. You know, I think that, and it's interesting, Dr. McCallum's idea around vocabulary only occurring after students have been given an opportunity to really engage conceptually with whatever it is before we attach vocabulary to it. I happen to still think that, you know, language or domain specific vocabulary, in addition to you know, just the work with procedural stuff is super important in developing students. Vocabulary is really important. Now, I may be the oldest person on this panel, I'm not sure, but you know, I still look back to Isabel Beck and bringing words to life, the idea of tiered vocabulary, tier 1, tier 2, and that you know, domain specific tier 3 vocabulary, and using tools like the personal thesaurus in the classroom, which I think is really important and was expressed a couple of times, where students already have, in many instances, some conceptual understanding, but may not have the language to attach to those concepts with it. They may just naturally hold, and beginning to help students acquire the language that they can attach to that specific vocabulary that helps them become better able to articulate, better able to convey and express, you know, their mathematical thinking. I think that's important. Also, you know, we use the personal dictionary as well, based on the Freire model. These are all tools that we develop in the academic English mastery program to help us, right? Help students begin to acquire the language. So I think, you know, making sure the teachers have access to particular tools and strategies, I think is really important. But I think really, first of all, just breaking through that barrier in terms of mindset regarding language and math and the linking of those two, the melding of language and math, I think is the primary challenge that we need to address. So, and I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Yes, so many things, and we're running low on time, but I do have a follow-up question for Georgina. Could you provide some specific examples of challenges that you have come across in your capacity as a school administrator? What have you done in your practice to help teachers and leaders overcome these challenges?
So I just want to say thank you to Anthony, because I do believe it's a mindset issue first, but I just want to say, I truly believe all students are math language learners. I don't find that students come into a classroom, whether they're multilingual or not, having the academic language of mathematics. They don't come in knowing the word denominator. And so when we're attending to our multilingual learners, we're really helping all of our students. So that's really important. So some of the challenges that I faced is really helping teachers to see that the strategies that you're using within your literacy block, because I work with elementary and middle school students. So, but with my elementary, those strategies we use in literacy, like Anthony was saying, regarding Goldie Muhammad's work, we should be connecting that in mathematics, because they know how to teach vocabulary. They know how to break down a small passage for comprehension, and yet we're not doing that. And so one of the challenges is, are we planning for how we are talking about academic vocabulary and allowing students to use informal language until they're ready for the word, and then allowing them to use the word when they're ready? I think that's really important. Another challenge, and I would say for all those that are site leaders, is you need to look at your master schedule. I've noticed many times that during the academic day, sometimes students that are multilingual are pulled out for services. They should not be pulled out during math. I'm going to be honest, like I've been guilty of giving the side eye. If they show up, I know one of my principals is on here and she knows, like, it's during math. That's a sacred time. How can you learn the language of math if you're not in math class? And I know that sounds silly, but you need to go investigate that as a building or site level leader, or if you work with the district, like find out what happens and make sure that all of your students are there, because they're all developing language together. Put some guardrails around that. And then I would say, look at your assessment practices. As a building level leader, they told me my multilingual learners weren't doing well on assessments. And I said, that doesn't make sense to me. I know they're brilliant. What's going on? Well, they're all written. So if we're only honoring the written word, that's a major problem. We have to look at the way we assess students. Could we interview them? Is there a staff member that has that native language that could ask them the same question, but in their native language? Are we accessing the resources within our building for assessment? Or, I know this might be controversial, but the standardized test isn't everything. Can we look at formative assessments? Can we look at project-based learning? Can we look at the tasks that they're doing? Can we look at the games when they're playing them? And can they show us their brilliance in other ways besides all of these written tests all the time? Because they are using the words, but I'll be honest, it is more relaxing to use a mathematical word during a game than it is during a high stakes test. And so if we're paying attention to academic vocabulary, let's build it in ways that are joyful and fun, because that's really important. Like as a classroom site-based leader, I get to walk into lots of classrooms. So the more I hear students talking and using academic language, that's the way they're going to acquire it. When I go into a room and the teacher's using all the language, I know kids are not acquiring language. You can't learn something if you don't actually say it. That's really, really important. And my last thing that I'll say is building teacher capacity. Everyone has to understand we are teachers of language. We are not just math teachers. They go hand in hand. They cannot be separated, because even if you know the math, you have to be able to express it, even through whichever way, a visual, through written word, through spoken word, but we have to be able to express it, because knowing math is powerful. And so if we're not giving them the academic language, we're not allowing them to reach the highest levels of mathematics. And so that's really important. And that could be done in small groups with teachers. It could be done through teaching them the math language routines, or just helping bring awareness to their planning, that they're planning for language as much as they're planning for math. So those are just some of the things that I face. I know I'm very passionate about this, but I just feel like when we talk about math language learners, it's separate. It shouldn't be separate. They're all learning language together. So let's make it a community thing that we're doing, so we're helping all of our students at once.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to say that is that on that. Let's hear from some IM students who are engaging in this work right now.
Good morning, Anora. How are you today?
I'm feeling amazing.
Amazing. So I'm here today to ask you a few questions about math. How do you feel about math?
It's really, really fun, especially the story problems, and I love it.
You love the story problems. What about your do you know we do things like which one doesn't belong and true or false and all those warm-ups that Miss Bruce does with you?
I love all of those.
You love all of those. When you do which one doesn't belong, do you like to give your opinion about it? Tell me about that. What's that routine like?
It's fun.
It's fun. What makes it fun?
Now we're all together.
That you're all together in the class? Yeah. Does it help you to learn the math when you do it with other people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you like the most about math, Sophia?
That it's fun and entertaining, and you can learn a lot about it.
Plus, do you like sharing your ideas?
Yeah, but I'm not really good at it.
You don't think so? Why do you like sharing your ideas then?
Because then other people can know how to do it, and some people in class, they just like me, and they really enjoy math. And sometimes when I show them it, their faces kind of brighten more because they realize how to do it, and it just really makes me happy.
What do you like most about math, Amy?
That we can do it any way we want.
Would you consider yourself a math person?
Kind of.
Kind of? Yeah, tell me why.
Because math's kind of peaceful sometimes and fun, and sometimes I can struggle, but struggling is good because then you can see what you need to work on and you can use your time.
We use models
Yes.
in our math. Do you like using those models?
Yes, I really like the model.
Can you tell me why?
Because it's very easy to know, because I see that model and I very easy to know what is need to do. The model have English in there and I read it and I learn about a lot English. Math, I very like math because the math is make me good, and it's feeling good.
Do you have a favorite part of our math block?
I like when I think I like the cooldowns because basically it's easy because
it's what you learned that day in math, and you basically already know it because we do a lot of partner work and they know it, and we sit on the carpet and we go over it. So the cool down is basically all what we did, and it's like more, I think it's really nice because it's all quiet and you just get to do your work.
I'm Elijah Moraes, and I'm very excited about this new math curriculum. We get to work on stuff and we get to discuss a lot. And there's a lot of different stuff I do with my partner, and we both get to work together and explain patterns. Since we're working together, we learn more stuff. Let's say I know something my partner doesn't, I help her with that, and then if I don't know something, she helps me with that, and then after all of the partner stuff, the teacher explains it better, so that grows my knowledge as a mathematician.
Let the kids tell you. And so we are out of time.
Good morning.
I appreciate you all for coming. I cannot end without a Dr. Maya Angelou quote. May she rest in peace and may she forever live on the U.S. Quarter. She says, words are things, I am convinced someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get into your wallpaper. They get into your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally, into you. Language surrounds us and lives in us. It is a part of the structure of how we see the world and how we understand ourselves, and thus how we come to know, use, and enjoy mathematics. I want to send another heartfelt thank you to our panelists for the things we have learned today. Thank you so much. And thank you to our IM community. Thank you all for attending. Be on the lookout for webinar number 5, which is coming in March. It'll be on family engagement, collaboration, and support. And we are looking forward to closing out this series and much more to come after this. Thank you so much for attending. And I'll see you all. Go ahead and take a look at our website, illustrativemathematics.org. And click on the math curriculum, K-5 math, and you'll see all of our on-demand webinars that we've done in the past. And we thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our certified providers who are Kendall Hunt and Imagine Learning. Also, thank you to Brandy, Cam, Kate, Mike, Olivia, Carl, Kristen, and Bill McCallum, our leadership team, and thank you from our writing team to our IM community. We could not do this without you. We are so happy you are a part of our community and our space. Bye, everyone.